and now we're going to get started. So, Steve, can you just talk briefly about retargeting? So this is something that I feel like we've all seen, but it's a term we may not be familiar with. So first, what's retargeting?
Totally. So retargeting is a methodology or principle that allows you to um, maintain relevance and frequency in front of your target audiences by essentially following them around the web. So an example of this would be if you've ever been shopping on Amazon.com and you're checking out a cool pair of shoes and you don't pull the trigger on it right away, but you then go to Facebook and you see that exact pair of shoes in your ad stream there, that's retargeting. And basically what it allows you to do is um, really increase the frequency so that your target audience will be more likely to take action, whatever that action is, whether that's, listing with you, or for us, if it's, requesting a demo, or, purchasing that pair of shoes. It increases the likelihood of the prospect or lead to actually convert.
I love it. It happens to me all the time. Like 3 days ago, I needed to buy a new pair of work boots, and every ad I've seen on every platform and website I've gone to since has been on work boots. So I've seen those a lot. So I guess the next question is that's a great idea, is being able to, if somebody's interested in real estate, especially in your area, how do I do that? What can I use to get that concept out there to start to market in that way?
Totally. So the answer is everything, um, but more directly, because it's a methodology and more of like a principle or strategy. You'll see that most of the big, social media platforms or big digital properties, or big players in the space, they have the ability to roll out retargeting campaigns natively. And so the way that they do that is they drop what's called a pixel, right? And basically it's a little cookie that flags in the user's browser and then identifies that person anonymously as they navigate around the web, right? So there's a lot of reciprocity between like the Facebooks, the Googles, the LinkedIn's of the world, where generally speaking, the pixels are pretty similar. So it's really, you can use whatever platform as long as there is a pixel that allows you to actually cookie that user and follow them around. One thing that I will say, outside of the native, the native placements, whether you're doing Facebook ads or what have you, is there are other like distribution networks that work with larger like media companies, right? So when you're advertising, if you see banner ads or something on time.com, you're not actually natively placing ads on time.com. You're actually using a distribution network and an ad network that is distributing your content and serving it to users that match within their audience, right? And so you can use not only native platforms, but also distribution networks to really reach your target audience. So
I love that. So it sounds like if somebody's new to this, if somebody's new to the digital marketing and they want to do some of that retargeting, especially if in real estate, if we're farming a specific area, what's a good place to start? Is it going to be Facebook? Because I know we have ads on there. Is it going to be a different service? What's going to be the beginner's guide? What's going to be the first thing that I should click on when I want to start retargeting?
so I would say Facebook is probably a safe bet, your safest bet, right? The reason I say that is they have a very, very rich um, like user profile with intent data. So intent meaning like somebody is likely to do X, as well as definitive like core metrics on each person, which I know sounds like creepy, but ideally, you're serving ads that are actually valuable to your prospective audience. So Facebook is definitely a safe bet. I would also say Facebook is a safe bet because just the nature of the work that we do in the real estate industry is a very personal and high touch, and it's a process that warrants kind of that white glove, but also like that friendly approach. Whereas like LinkedIn, I wouldn't click through an ad to list my home, on LinkedIn, right? It's impersonal, it's kind of stodgy. Um, but for this space, I would say Facebook, hands down, is probably that, and Instagram, right? Just because the types of content that perform well um, on those two channels actually are directly in line with what we do in the real estate space. So
Gotcha. And there's something I like that you said, and there's some platforms where you're more likely to do click on one of those ads, especially if it is a retargeting ad. So why on some platforms does this work better? Or I guess just as a general question, why does this work as a strategy?
totally. So, and I need to stop saying totally, evidently. So so
I like it.
right. It's a West Coast thing, right? Um, so the reason it works is frequency. That's the name of the game. The more familiar the end user is with your brand, your service, whatever you're really pitching them, the more likely they are to act. One of the challenges that I see digital marketers, I think, finally coming around to, especially in this space, having been in the real estate space for 12 plus years, is this idea of like, when you advertise in the real estate space, it cannot be transactional at all. Like, you do not go for the sale immediately. There's a process, and there's a time period that exists prior to somebody deciding to list with you or deciding to buy with you, where they need to familiarize themselves not only with your brand and you, but also real estate conceptually, right? So there's education and nurture along that process that's really important, and retargeting allows you to do so programmatically. And that frequency, as you kind of chip away, if I've seen Tom's face every day for the past 90 days, and I know that he's a real estate agent, when I go to buy a home, I'm more than likely going to go with Tom, because just for whatever reason, I've seen him everywhere. I know enough about him. I'm familiar with him. Yeah, so really, especially because a home is a lot of people's largest assets that they ever invest in. Like, it's really, really important that there's a long tail, like, education and frequency and familiarity ahead of actually transacting business with them. So yeah,
I
I
love that
ramble.
answer, especially because it has so much of that personality in it. And, when you're a real estate agent, it is something that you need somebody to trust, right? It is
Yep.
a way that you would have to get somebody to do this largest thing in their life. So
Mhm.
we've talked about what platforms can be used, and what's the first step we should take. So what are a couple ways that we can get the most out of our marketing campaigns, especially if we're implementing it now?
Yeah, so the first one, and this is not a cop out, I promise, is start. Like, literally
Start.
go on Facebook, or Google search quickly, Facebook tracking pixel, put it on your site like today, even if you're not going to use it right away, because it'll still collect data. And when you are ready, you don't want that to be a blocker to get started. So I would say, like, just start. You absolutely should, even if you're spending $1 a day or $5 a day or $500 a day. Place that pixel. You will thank me for it, I promise. The second piece is get very, very experimental and like scientific in how you deploy your campaigns. I've over the course of my career, I've adopted this methodology, or this idea that, like, I'm quote unquote married to nothing. And what I mean by that is, like, everything that I do, obviously there are strategic principles that you operate against, but on a daily basis, I go into our campaigns and I say, okay, these are underperforming, 3 pieces of creative. Let's bump those out. this audience isn't performing well. Let's go ahead and kind of shift that a little bit. Let's incrementally iterate. Like be very, very methodical and scientific about how you manage these campaigns, because it's not set it and forget it. It's not, you put up the billboard once and it's like, hopefully enough eyeballs see it. It's no, you can tweak and iterate as you go. Don't be married to the first idea that pops in your head. Obviously execute on it. Don't get stuck analyzing, but also make sure that you're really managing it. Like it's not turn it on and then you're good. It's, you need to manage it. You need to be methodical. You need to be scientific. And then the third piece would
Well,
be,
can I ask you a question really
yeah.
quick? Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but I like that last point of don't being married to anything. Is there any repercussions to switching? So if you're using one, like Facebook, for example, is there any drawbacks to switching to a different service?
It depends, right? Like that's a tough question. Um, just because there are so many variables. I will clarify a little bit, and I think this is kind of what you're getting at, is like I wouldn't bounce back and forth from platform to platform, just because like the worst thing that you could do is turn on a campaign on Facebook and then a day later say, oh, it didn't work, and then bounce to something else. Like, don't do that. Like, be married to the core principle or like strategy of digital marketing or through retargeting, but don't be married to like the campaign level stuff, right? That's kind of what I mean. Does that answer the question that I don't think that you?
Absolutely, yeah,
Okay,
of
cool.
course, yeah. See the campaigns through, but switching the service if you're looking to improve is not a terrible thing. That's I think perfect. So
Yep, totally. Totally. And the third thing would be, and this is related to experimentation and like incremental, like iteration, but always make sure that you're running variants across the board, right? So it's not one piece of creative that you're distributing across everything, hoping to get different results with the same piece. Like be creative in the mix and the variety and the variance that you deploy. And what I mean by that is, when I deploy campaigns, whether it's at Buyside or anywhere else, I typically, and I'm an engineering background, so I'm mega nerd. I typically deploy like 15 variants at a time, and variants could be different copy, different images. Instead of a target photo, I'm going to use a photo of people shaking hands, or you don't have to go that over the top, but definitely make sure that you do introduce variants, because what it allows you to do is learn and kind of validate a hypothesis or invalidate a hypothesis that you have. And the name of the game is just like rapidly learning what your audience is going to respond to. So yeah, those
perfect.
are
I
my
love
three.
that. And one of the first thing you said I really like, which is just start. Like get out there and try it, especially with any new tool. Just get out there and give it a shot. And there is the old expression. I think it's the journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step. We'll modify that for marketing just a bit. The journey of 1,000 newsletters starts with a single email. So that's the first bit. And the second is what that last point that you made. Always make sure that you're running a variance. I think is great because I know I've seen the same video on Facebook twice a day, every day, and it's one of those things where now I'm not annoyed with the product. I'm just annoyed that the ad is the exact same every single day. So I guess that dovetails nicely into our next question: is what is the frequency? How often should we be sending these out to get people's attention but not annoy them with our content?
Yeah, so another one of those loaded questions, but frequency, it depends on what you're trying to do. So like if you think about your buyer seller journey, right? There's different stages of the funnel, right? Top of funnel is like largely like awareness education. Mid funnel is what is it? Educating them to actually perform an action, and bottom of the funnel is like, let's actually get them engaged with you as a real estate professional. So the reason I bring this up is there's like you need to be doing this throughout. Like frequency, like you should be running ads always, but you should think of those stages, or those, yeah, those stages in the funnel as those, like, those gates, right? So like on the top end, it's, maybe for the first month in retargeting, a particular target audience, it's just educational content. And then after that 30 days, and they get bumped down to a more, stronger sales call to action. And then they get bumped down to, a hard sell, right? So frequency, I'd say always run campaigns. Obviously, like, the more that they see your face, the better. I don't think, as long as you're reaching the right people and targeting correctly, um, you should be providing value to them regardless, right? But think of it as like different stages. So think of, okay, the first part is they need to be familiarized, or they need to familiarize themselves with real estate as a whole. So here's, 3 pieces of content that I can promote for that stage, and then kind of look at it that way. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. I love that. That's perfect, especially the stages part, because we know that, especially in real estate, everything happens in stages, whether it's the introduction,
Right.
staying in flow, an actual being in process. I mean, walking through the sales flow of a real estate, there's generally 4 or 5 steps in there. So th
Mhm.
this was perfect in the sense that you can follow up to each one of those phases.